Movie buffs, welcome back to the Movie Bay. This is Director Spotlight number 2, featuring the talent of F. Gary Gray. We're going to take a look at some of F. Gary Gray's movies, and we're going to go ahead and dive in, starting with Set It Off. Set It Off came out in 1996. It features Queen Latifah, Jada Pinkett, before she became Jada Pinkett Smith, right before she married Will, I do believe, Vivica Fox, and Kimberly Elise. So this is a bank robbery movie, not to be confused with a heist movie like Heat or even like Flawless movies like those or The Score. They did do some planning later on, but they started off very slow. So this was more about robbing banks than like doing elaborate heists and setups and things like that. It was a fantastic movie, really good movie. We loved it. Everybody who saw this movie loved it. It's a classic. It holds up well today. You can watch this movie right now and get a lot of entertainment out of it. A fantastic cast. You also had Blair Underwood in here as like, I wouldn't say he was their boss, but he kind of knew what was going on. Fantastic movie. And the ending was pretty sad. Set It Off. Number 2. Let's take a look at one of my favorite movies in my collection. Not quite my favorite. This will probably break my top 100. Probably. Or top 200. Jamie Foxx and, let's see, Gerard Butler and Law-Abiding Citizen. Law-Abiding Citizen is a fantastic movie. This is definitely in my top, out of movies of all time in my collection. This would probably make my top, I would put it in my top 200 just to be on the safe side, but it might even rank higher than that. But anyway, Law-Abiding Citizen came out in 2009, and what this movie is about, Gerard Butler, his family was basically killed and slaughtered right in front of him. He was left for dead. He survived. Jamie Foxx was the prosecuting attorney in charge of prosecuting the case. He cared more about his record than he did about administering justice. And Gerard Butler's character, he didn't really care if he lost the case in court. He just wanted the DA or the prosecutor to at least try to win the case, to try to push it to trial. And if he had lost, he would have been fine with that. He wanted to see an effort. He wanted justice for his family. His wife and his little girl was killed. And Jamie Foxx was all about his reputation, his record, wearing the nice suits and all that. He didn't care about justice. But Gerard Butler, he got his revenge. But at the end, his revenge consumed him. Really good movie. Fantastic. I'm not going to say effects, but the way they set it up where when he was in jail, he had a tunnel that he was able to get out of jail to go do his dirt and get back in. They was trying to figure out how he was doing it all. Come to find out, this guy was a CIA cleaner for the CIA. He was like a brain. He was the type of guy where if they couldn't get the target done, he could get it done. Fantastic movie, really. I think this right here, to me, this is probably F. Gary Gray's finest movie in my collection that I have. So out of all the movies that F. Gary Gray that we're going to feature, I think this is probably the best one to me. Let's just keep digging to see if that's going to hold up to the end of the video. Next up, the Italian Job remake. This was pretty good. It wasn't better than the original, but it was pretty good. Great cast: Charlize Theron, Mark Wahlberg, Jason Statham, Donald Sutherland. This is a good movie. It's very entertaining. You got, how could I forget Edward Norton? That's one of my favorite actors. Great cast, good movie. It isn't one of my best movies, but it's a good movie. It's a pretty decent remake. Still, the original to me is better. Next up, I featured this in one of my underrated movie series, and it's The Negotiator. This is a really good movie. I mean, so basically what you got here is Samuel Jackson character is set up for robbing the police pension fund. Come to find out, because I said set up, come to find out it wasn't him. It was his fellow cops. Kevin Spacey was called in because he was an outsider. He was a negotiator for a different department. So Sam couldn't trust anybody in his own department. So he called in this outsider. Kevin Spacey and Samuel Jackson gave great performances. They played well off of each other in this movie. They played really well off of each other's energy. And that was 1998's The Negotiator. Next up is probably one of the best comedies out there. And I'm not really a comedy buff, but this right here is one of the better comedies that I've seen uh, in my life. So, and that's Friday, the original Friday. Friday came out in 1995. You got Ice Cube, Chris Tucker, Tiny Lister Johnson, I do believe his last name is, Nia Long, Clarence Witherspoon. No, was his name Clarence Witherspoon? John Witherspoon. I'm sorry, John Witherspoon, and just an all-star cast. Basically, the whole movie takes place on a porch. Basically, they do leave and go to the store to get some beer, I think, but the whole movie pretty much goes down on a porch, and it's just a really fun movie. This is a really good movie. It's funny. It led to a franchise. I didn't really care too much for none of the other ones. Next Friday was okay, but Friday after next, I wasn't really feeling that one. This is still the best Friday, in my opinion. I really like this movie. And that was 1995's Friday. Next up is a movie that is so underrated. This is definitely going in my underrated series. So don't be surprised if you see this movie pop up again in the underrated movies. It's underrated, but I can see why it's underrated. It's a cheesy movie, but it's still a good watch, especially if you like these type of movies. And this is Vin Diesel, Man Apart. What makes this movie, let's see, 03, this came out 2003, 20 years ago. So Man Apart, it's an okay revenge movie. Basically, Vin Diesel and Lorenz Tate, they part of a specialized unit. They go after the heavy hitters. And Vin Diesel, he unmasked himself too early, and his face was seen. And then they sent a hit team to his house. Instead of killing him, they killed his wife. And that's where he started becoming like a man apart. He just started losing it. And all he could think about was revenge. Fantastic movie. Again, it's kind of par for the course for the 90s. These type of revenge movies, they're a dime a dozen. In fact, I could do a video on just these type of revenge movies. But it's still a decent movie. Next up, we got 2015's Straight Outta Compton. Straight Outta Compton, we already know this is the movie basically telling the story of NWA, how they started, how they rose, how they fall, how they fell. Even the death of Eazy-E is in this movie. This is a really good movie, especially if you're a hip-hop fan from the early days of NWA and all of that, the raunchier side of hip-hop. If you was an NWA fan, you would love this movie. In fact, Ice Cube had his son, O'Shea Jackson Jr., to play him. And he did a good job because he looks just like his father. Fantastic movie, especially if you are an NWA fan. You would really love this movie. Next up, we have 2017's Fate of the Furious. Now, there's a love-hate relationship with me and the Fast and the Furious franchise. I love part of it, and I hate some of it. You know what I'm saying? It's a really long franchise. From what I'm understanding, it's going all the way up to 11 movies. 10 is probably wrapping up now, coming out probably this year or early next year, probably. I'm not sure. But I know there's, from what I saw from the next installment, it didn't look like it's going to be all that to me. I mean, they do got Jason Momoa in there. You know, let's sidebar real quick. The Fast and the Furious franchise, I question some of their casting decisions with their guests, like not the main cast. We know who they are, but some of the people like John Cena. I question John Cena. The Rock was a great addition. Jason Statham was a pretty decent addition, but there was so many other people I think was probably more suited for this franchise than John Cena and some of the other people that we saw popping in and out of the franchise over the years. They probably could have excited or electrified the fan base. Now, I'm not a huge wrestling fan as of late. My wrestling days, my love of wrestling goes all the way back to basically, guys, look, I'm a Hulkamaniac. So that's where I go back. That's where my love of wrestling goes. I'm back to those days before the Attitude Era. Now, by the time the Attitude Era came around, I was already out of love with wrestling and not really paying attention to it no more. So John Cena doesn't do anything for me. The Rock, he's electrifying. He was like Hulk Hogan 2.0. So, but John Cena, he never had that. For me, watching him, I get the whole hip-hop thing with the music. I did like his entry song. That was a banger. I did like that, but he just wasn't electrifying to me. Not like The Rock, not like Stone Cold. Those two guys was probably the most electrifying wrestlers since Hulk Hogan, in my opinion. If we just talking about the WWF or whatever the hell it's called now. We're not talking about any of the guys from like the NWA, like the Nature Boy, Dusty Rhodes. We're not talking about them. We're just talking about guys over in the WWF. I don't know what it's called now. Or it might be what, WCW? Who knows? But again, I'm sorry, we're just sidebarring. F. Gary Gray's The Fate of the Furious. This was the first movie that didn't feature any of Paul Walker. We know his brother did. He was in 7 a little bit. I know he passed away during production of 7. And his brother helped finish that one out. And this is the first one with no Paul Walker in it whatsoever. And it was okay for a Fast and the Furious movie. This is where the love-hate comes in. We go into these movies with certain expectations. And did it meet the expectation for what this franchise is known for? Yes, it did. But I just have certain ones in the franchise that I really love and some that I don't. And this is one that I don't. I don't think I hate any of them really. But this is one of the ones that I really don't really care too much for. Next up, let's talk about Men in Black International. This is the newest one that's in my collection. 2019 Trainwreck. Look. I get what they was doing. So they wanted to like grow the franchise, probably do a new trilogy. This movie just didn't go over well. No. I can't even begin to justify this movie. I would say that the effects was really good. The CGI was really good. The acting for what this movie is was okay. But again, for me, I didn't like the casting in this movie. I didn't like Tessa Thompson or Hemsworth. I didn't like either one of them for this movie. If they would have just cast it differently, who, I don't know. Maybe in the comment sections you can drop a line, and we could go with another female. It wasn't about a male and a female this time. Nah, I just didn't think Tessa Thompson was right for this movie. I'm not a huge Tessa Thompson fan, to be honest with you. Hemsworth, certain things that he do I like, some that I don't. But yeah, Men in Black International, definitely a flop. A box office flop, a critical flop, and just a popcorn movie at best. It's a shame that they couldn't reboot and relaunch this franchise and have it take off like the original trilogy did, but the casting wasn't right. So that's my movies on F. Gary Gray. That's our director spotlight featuring some movies from F. Gary Gray. I hope you enjoyed. Next up, we're going to be doing some really good ones. We're doing Ridley Scott. See you in the next one.